Hi, I'm Maggie.
And I'm Nicole. Welcome to the DAC Dyslexia and Coffee podcast. We're so happy you could join us. We're both moms and dyslexia interventionists who want to talk about our students and children, what dyslexia is, how it affects our kids, strategies to help, and topics related to other learning disabilities will all be covered in this podcast. Parents are not alone, and we want to give voice to the concerns and struggles we are all having. This is a safe place to learn more about how to help our children grow and succeed in school and the world. Grab a cup of coffee and enjoy the conversation.
Hi, everybody. So it is time for the concept of the week. The concept of the week is how we like to open our show, and it allows us to pull back the curtain a little bit and let our listeners into an intervention session. So we like to teach about the things that we would actually teach our students. And this week's concept of the week is a prefix. The prefix dis. So dis means apart or not, and it comes from the Latin layer of language. It is a very common prefix. So I teach this one usually actually pretty early on. If I have an older student, I am going to come alongside them, and while we're actually learning closed syllables, I'm going to teach them this prefix.
Because it's also a closed syllable.
It is a closed syllable. And I'm going to teach it for meaning right away. There's really no need to wait on that, especially for an older student who actually really needs it, right?
Right. Just think of all the common words. Dislike, discard.
Yes.
Disappropriate.
Right. All
that.
And yeah, I think it's a great one to teach early on. It's very, very common. And it also kind of gives the idea that our parts of our language comes from different
origins.
Yeah. So it's a good way to kind of teach a lot of things all at once, and it's pretty transparent for meaning usually, right? Like dislike, I do not like that.
Exactly.
Disappear, right? Like I have not appeared. So it's a good one for a lot of reasons.
I agree. So we are on episode 40, and this is the summer slide and how to avoid it.
Yikes.
So first we need to define what is the summer slide.
The dreaded summer slide.
It's also called the summer learning loss. So on average, test scores flatten or drop during the summer, with larger drops typically in math and then reading, but reading and math tend to both go down in the summer.
I feel like that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, because I'm thinking about, even when we're talking about like summer learning loss or like what are we doing with our kids over summer, I think like we have a lot of really good ideas for reading, but not always do we think about math. So
I try to avoid math, to be honest with you. So, your examples of doing the things in the kitchen with the fractions, that's like great things to do. But yeah, like I agree. I think that everybody thinks about the reading first, and then, we don't always
think as explicitly about math. At least I don't. Maybe that's just kind of my own.
We are reading interventionists.
Yes, this is true.
So sometimes when learning slows down over summer breaks, kids can lose some other academic gains that they made during the school year. And us educators would call it the summer slide. And this is especially true for kids that are already struggling academically, but it can also happen to anyone.
Yeah, right. And again, that surely makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But we're not using a skill over and over again.
It gets a little rusty.
Are those little brain pathways that are built over time, they kind of get paved over a bit.
Yes. And this can happen in any subject, but reading and math are the most common.
Yeah. And also the most measured.
Correct. That's true.
That's what we focus on a lot, is that reading and math.
So that's why we did an episode 2 episodes ago about, what we can do over the summer to help keep our kids' skills sharp and make sure they're ready for the new school year. But what's really important is just keeping the reading, writing, and learning over the summer active.
Yeah, absolutely. Children's brains need to be engaged in order to stay sharp. If children don't use their academic skills over the summer, those kids will start to fade. And this is especially true in younger students whose brains are still developing, because that brain is going crazy, making new connections really quickly every day. And so if it's not using those, I think of it like as a path in the grass, right? When I was a little kid, I had one of my best friends was like in my backyard. So our backyards touched. And so we would walk to each other's houses every day. Okay. We had like a little path because we were just in each other's yards and spaces so much. So it's like, okay, I'm picturing that in my brain. If this is a skill I'm using every day, that's going to be like a dirt path. But if I'm not using it, that's when like the little grass kind of creeps up between it.
That's a good analogy.
And it just kind of gets that. I'm all about the analogies, but like that's just even what I picture, and that's usually what I describe to kids too, because they can picture that in their brains, and it really does, I think, then make a lot of sense. Like, oh yeah, we actually need to practice these skills to stay sharp on that. Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons why summer slide happens. Children don't have the same structure and support during the summer as they do during the school year. They may not have access to books, computers, or other educational resources. They may also spend more time watching TV, playing video games, or doing other activities that don't require them to use their academic skills. This is one of the reasons, too, that we see the summer slide or that learning loss most prevalent in areas that are under-resourced.
That's a big research, actually, area that they say. Yeah. And it's the most significant cause of the achievement gap between these students that are in underserved populations in areas versus wealthier areas.
Right. I mean, and that just, of course, that makes all the sense. I mean, those of us with the resources to provide those things to our children do, which also means the parental time usually is also at an advantage, right? Usually we are the parents who do have that margin and ability to serve those kids during the summertime.
So one study said on average, economically disadvantaged students lose more than 2 months of reading achievement over the summer, compared to slight gains maybe made by a middle-class student. But by sixth grade, the cumulative effect of summer reading loss creates a gap of 18 months or more between the struggling and proficient reader.
Oof.
That's a big gap.
That's a huge gap. Yeah, and over time, right, so that summer reading loss accounts for about 2/3 of the gap between economically disadvantaged students and their wealthy peers. So children who start off behind often stay behind, and then struggling right in that middle and high school, right, those people who tend to drop out of high school at a way higher than average rate.
Correct.
Which just problems begat problems, right? Those are those kids that they're not getting it, they're behind. Eventually, other things are more important and they drop out. And unfortunately, this also comes along the statistic of kids in juvenile detention.
Exactly.
And jail and prison tend to have very, very low reading and low reading and math skills. This is kind of similar to that Matthew effect we've talked about before.
Right.
Where, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's like a biblical principle, but it absolutely applies to academic skills. that the more robust someone's academic skills are and their kind of acumen for reading and math, the more they gain those skills. And when you don't start off with those skills and you're not given access to that, your skills get poorer and poorer over time.
Correct. That's what we see with our students with dyslexia a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some things in the summer that you can do to incorporate reading, writing, and hands-on learning is doing some vocabulary and comprehension with them. So like reading comprehension is the ability to like understand what you read. So this is either you reading to them or you reading together or the student reading to themselves, but making sure that they understand what they're reading. It's an essential skill for the academic success, and it can be improved by reading regularly. So that comes back to our 15, 20 minutes a day of reading that we recommend, and that's what research recommends, which is really not that long of time.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a block of time either.
Right, it can be broken up.
Either.
Yeah.
That, if you have a young kid at home who does not have a 15 to 20 minute attention span, me too, raising my hand here.
You can read for 5 minutes, go do something else.
Yeah.
Another 5 minutes, maybe later in the day.
Yeah. You can really, and those incidental reading touch points count.
They do.
That all counts towards that 15 minutes to 20 minutes a day. And reading widely across different genres, right? That gives kids more opportunities to wrestle with challenging books. Kids do need like that act of like, I actually don't know this and I have to figure it out. That's actually how we're building stronger connections in our brains, right? And that we can understand the stories that other texts are structured. So if we are reading across a lot of subjects, that is really important for our brains. And that, yes, challenging ourselves on purpose, right? It's no different than weightlifting, right?
Right.
If you're sitting there and you're curling a 3-pound weight and it's no problem for you, you're okay, that's fine, but you're not building any muscle.
Correct.
You have to challenge yourself in little increments over time, and reading and math skills are not any different.
Correct. Another thing too this does is build their vocabulary. So like exposing your child, like before, I know somebody who reads a book before they go to the zoo, and then they go look at the animals. So they're reading about the animal, but they're learning new vocabulary about the animal before they even get to the zoo.
I love that. I really love that idea. And that's so practical.
Right. Because who can never get in front of those things that actually tell you about the animals because there's so many people in front of them.
Yeah, you got to go when the weather's kind of crappy.
Yeah.
That's when you got to go to the zoo because nobody wants to be there then.
As an OT, I think it's also important to do writing or something that's like low stakes, right? Yes. Grocery lists for a summer picnic, keeping a nature journal, writing postcards to family members, writing a letter to your parents about fun things you want to do in the summer, because that helps practice writing the words, keeping their fine motor skills active, being able to continuously write.
Yes.
Because, writing is also a skill.
Absolutely. And our listeners will absolutely know this about Nicole and I, but it's so important that we're working on those writing skills right alongside the writing skills. I was reading an article this week that I don't even know if I should share with you because it's going to upset you. But it was about the fine motor skills, and just fewer and fewer kids in pre-K can even not not even properly hold, right? Like that we understand that in pre-K, we're going to actually have to teach them how to grip a crayon or a pencil or, but like can't pick it up. Don't have the pincer skills to pick up crayons and pencils because they're not doing it when they're little.
Oh my goodness.
That they're not doing it. And even like picking up their own spoon to feed themselves, they're not doing it. And so they're losing that ability to even pick up a writing utensil, let alone understand how to use it.
Oh my gosh.
That we've really lost in just the iPad of it all. Which that's a whole other drum. That's an episode for a different time.
Yes.
But
that's scary.
It was really...
That's really scary because
those... really sad.
Those fundamental foundation skills like that build your fine motor for the rest of your life.
Yes.
It's not just
and then
for
you
academics.
Can't even cross the midline. So it's like if you can't even do that...
You can't cross midline.
You cannot cross midline, which for those of you not in education or OT or kind of the medical field, right, our midline is literally exactly what it sounds like. It's the middle of our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important for so many skills that we can take one part of our body, right, our left arm can reach across to the right side of our body and vice versa. And, also, right, our feet and our knees and all of it. But in order to cross midline, right, that pincer grasp is actually involved in that, and it comes first. And because that's not happening,
then you're not going to cross midline.
They're not going to cross midline, and they're not making that transition well. And it's like, oh my God. And this isn't one of those things that is only happening in underserved areas. It's happening
everywhere. That is really scary.
I was like, oh, I don't even think I want to share this with Nicole, but it is quite alarming.
That is alarming.
That it's not only the grip, which we know that has been on the decline.
Right.
We've known that for quite some time.
We have.
But it's like that.
Those basic skills for anything you do to take care of yourself, you need both crossing the midline and the pincher skill.
Like,
because
how do you brush your teeth? How do you brush
wash your face?
Yes.
Everything. Brush your hair.
Like bathe yourself. All those things that are absolutely, you have to be able to do that. I mean, if you are an able-bodied person, right?
Right.
So, suppose that you are able-bodied enough to have that skill.
Right.
It's so critical.
Exactly.
And it was really concerning, definitely to the point where I'm like, okay, thank God my kids can pick things up. Okay, I'm doing something at least. Yikes.
Oh my gosh. That's scary.
That was scary.
So learning new things over the summer is also good, like hands-on learning, using background knowledge, different topics that they can look through, even just having an audiobook of something. Yes. Those are really important too, to kind of help, just build those new things. We were talking in another episode about Legos, right? Yes. Following the directions, putting the Legos together. Not only is it fine motor, but it's reading directions. So that's reading. Yeah. So that actually counts towards your time of reading. Like you do cooking a lot with your kids, and that's also reading. You have to read the recipe.
Right, you must.
You must.
And my kids spend a lot of time with cookbooks too. We go to the library, and that is like my go-to tip too. If you're not a family that cooks often and you're feeling like intimidated by that, you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of cookbooks. And I personally find looking recipes up online like also too overwhelming.
There's a lot of them for the same thing.
It's just like too many choices and it's so overcomplicated. Mm-hmm. But I think going to the library and picking something simple, they have cookbooks at the library.
They do.
And you can check them out and you can make photocopies and, you can do.
Right.
I think that's like such a great place to start.
Just the library in general is a good place to go because it's free.
Yep.
And they have so many summer programs of with reading together or doing scavenger hunts where you have to read things and grab things and then they get little prizes.
Yeah.
They do other things too. What else do they do?
Even just the social aspect.
Right.
For your older kids, our library is doing, I'm really impressed. They do a gaming club. They do
fun.
like a Dungeons and Dragons club, which
nice.
I'm not wicked familiar with that game, but I will say there is a lot of reading involved, and it is like it's collaborating. So you have to you create a character, you are that character, and it's a collaborative game. So fun. It's storytelling.
Well, even playing like charades, you have to read the word.
Charades is great. And you have to read, you have to use critical thinking, vocabulary is involved, fine and gross motor is involved.
Exactly.
You have to interpret. I did a lot of social skills groups, and we played charades all the time and we would play it like you had to just use your face. Sometimes.
Oh my goodness.
And so it would be like emotions, right?
That's really good, yeah.
So you added just use your face,
mm-hmm.
and if then they couldn't get it, then you could incorporate your hands. But at first you had to just use your face. I mean, mm-hmm. that is a skill that we are also losing over time, is the ability to read facial expressions.
Right.
Which
Another one would
critical.
Be Pictionary, because that would be still...
Oh, Pictionary is great.
It's reading and writing, because you have to draw it or...
Yeah. And all these things truly are fun.
Yeah, they are.
Board games.
Board games are, board games, you have to read the directions. You have to read, even in like simple board games, there's usually a list mm-hmm. of something you have to read to kind of figure out.
My kids have recently discovered Trouble.
Right? Oh.
So you've got the pop,
mm-hmm.
and then you have to read the dots on the dice.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's moving around the board, and there are 4 pieces in place. So you have to think about what
you're going to do.
Which one you're going to do. And we kind of modify the rules a little bit so that we actually end the game of Trouble. I am all about okay, we're gonna modify this game a little bit, but I think there are just so many, the ways to learn new things. Some things that we do when we're going to be in the car for any length of time, let's say over 20 to 25 minutes, which because of where we live is fairly often, right? We live kind of in, for sure, the suburbs, but to go get anywhere, it's usually 25 to 30 minutes. My parents are about 20 minutes away. My in-laws are about 15. Going to Costco is 20 exactly. Trust me, we have that one down.
I was going to say, that one well.
We know that one very well. But kind of, if we're going to be in the car for that 25 to 30 minute sort of range, we have a few podcasts that we love that are kids podcasts.
Oh, fun.
But they're great. So one of them I would recommend is called Brains on Science.
Oh, fun.
And that one is APM, so American Public Media, I think. Okay. They're out of Minnesota. And it's the recommended ages is 8 through 14. But my kids both love it, and they're younger than that. But they have just a slew of topics. This week was on bruises. How do bruises form?
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And it was, my kids loved it. They thought it was really...
That goes back to the vocabulary piece.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked about abrasions. They talked about
nice.
A nick or a cut. All those things that are, wow, that's a lot of vocabulary and extremely relevant. Of course, they need to know these things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how to describe a cut too. They were kind of talking about that. So I love that one. And then kind of in the same vein, there's one that's called Who Smarted? And I could be wrong, but I believe that's actually Discovery.
Okay.
That puts that one out, or National Geographic maybe.
One of them.
I believe it's one of those two. So that one too is highly produced and very interesting for kids about the same age groups. Those ones are both, free on any podcast player. So this is our free plug for them.
Yeah. And we have audiobooks through Epic, which is a children's thing, and Catherine really loves it, and you can read along with it. Yeah, sometimes you have to look at stuff, but it's also reading. But I mean, there's different ways to do it also.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's those options too. And you can actually rent a lot of those from the library too,
yeah.
those audiobooks.
The ones that the libraries have, like, they're called the playaways. So they're like a self-contained audiobook.
Yeah, that's nice.
Those are great. For younger kids, I've been kind of searching for something on the little younger. A lot of those tend to be even a little too old for Aiden, who's 7, who can handle pretty complex text if he's hearing it auditorially. I mean, he has no problem following Harry Potter. It's kind of amazing to me that he can follow a book with so many characters.
Right.
That actually is a pretty complex book. Especially now we're in the 4th one, but he can remember kind of back to the beginning of the story even, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty crazy. But I just like the content of the ones in our library, I've just found a little too mature for him. But they do also have, now they're called Wonder Books. If you can kind of remember, we used to have like books on tape that had like a little chime when you're supposed to turn the page. Remember those?
Yeah, those. Yep.
Yeah. Those are like a self-contained book now. You don't have like the audio, but they do have that same thing. It's like a button that's built in. They're made by the same company that makes the playaways.
Oh, and those are for younger kids.
So they're picture books.
Okay.
And they have the little self-contained player.
Nice.
And you play it, and then it gives you a little chime when you're supposed to turn the page.
Nice.
And then those ones also have a quiz mode.
Oh, so that gets to the comprehension piece.
Yeah. So I was like,
nice.
Those are kind of fun. And
those are fun.
We've been checking a lot of those out lately. And those are all great ways. I think sometimes when we have a topic like summer slide, first of all, it sounds really scary.
It does. But really, it shouldn't be.
Right. It shouldn't be. Right. It's okay. And we know, the way we structure our school year, typically, at least here in the United States, is that we go pretty much 9 months on and 3 months off. Yes, there's a lot of exceptions to that, and a lot of research done on, year-round schools and all that kind of stuff.
Which we're not getting into in this podcast.
Right. That's totally a topic for a different time. But most of us function on the kind of 9 months on, 3 months off.
Correct.
Time frame. And by the way, there's also a lot of research to suggest that kids actually need a little too. Time. They need a little break. And we all do. So I think even though I do think this is a heavy topic, and like the idea of summer slide does scare me as an educator, it scares me as a mom, it scares me as an interventionist, there are a lot of really good, pretty easy, low stakes things that I think we all do already. And I think if we just keep it a little on the top of mind, we can really help our kids prevent that degree of summer slide.
Correct. So Maggie, what's happening beyond dyslexia?
Oh my goodness. So outside of dyslexia, it has been an extremely busy time. I think a couple episodes ago, we talked about, that May-December idea. Yep. We are still in that time frame. We are wrapping up another school year. And I have to shout out my 7-year-old. So my 7-year-old, who is in first grade, he's a kid who sometimes struggles to keep a hold of his own emotions. He has big emotions. He's a pretty sensitive kid. And he has been dealing with just a lot of change lately because his regular teacher is out on maternity leave.
Okay.
And they have a long-term sub who, before she accepted the long-term sub job, also had some other commitments. So she's actually been gone.
Oh, no.
quite a bit as well. So I think the school is handling it absolutely the best they can. When she is out, there is like another very regular sub. So I think they're doing everything they can to help these kids stay somewhat cohesive as a unit. But he just got nominated for the Perseverance Award at school for just, working really hard at those skills that it is hard for him.
Yeah.
But I was pretty proud, and I have to admit, kind of teary, because we've been really struggling at home with him, and just for all of those things. So to see that coming from school was like, oh, okay. Okay. All right.
See it.
They see it. He's working really hard. So that is my outside of dyslexia.
Yeah. For me, I guess it was last week. Carolyn was in a musical. Well, Wilson is technically in the musical in the chorus, but she is on the middle school. Their school is pretty much all in the musical. And so she had one of the parts, and it was really cute to see. And she did such a good job. She stayed on task, and she was pretty sad before she went on there, and she didn't let anybody know.
Aww.
And she just kept her smile on, and she kept going.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm really proud of her that she could do that, because that's really hard to do.
That's really
when you're
hard
12.
Oh yeah.
And you think it's what happened is horrible.
Oh,
and yet you could get up there and do it.
No
I know, right?
Which is just, that's huge. If I teach my kids nothing else, it's exactly that, right? Yep, we're feeling scared and we're gonna do it anyway.
Yep.
And okay, yep, not always comfortable, but we're gonna do it anyway. Good for her.
Yeah.
What was the play? What did they do?
So they did, they're in a Christian school, so they did a Christian play. Yeah. It was called Into the Inning something. So it was about them. Basically, they hit a ball, it hit the church, broke the window, and then the pastor and his wife came out, and they talked about, things that happened in the past.
Okay.
And then they had to build on it, and yet in their big game that they were really scared of. And
oh my gosh,
it was really good. Everybody was crying.
I was gonna say, it sounds really cute.
It was really cute. It was one of the best ones they've ever done, and because of the message, and also because the kids seem to really have a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Please follow us on social media and reach out if you have any questions or would like us to discuss a topic. If you do like our show, please be sure to follow and then rate our show on your favorite podcast player. That is actually what kind of pushes us up in the algorithms, which means that we get to reach more listeners and get to help more families. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.